Joyce, I just made you host again.
Joyce, do you want to make me the host and then I can assign the captioner? Go. Okay. Good morning, Carmen. I have set you as the captioner. Do you want to do a test, please?
It looks like it's going into the chat.
Going in the chat, yes.
Okay, now it's okay.
Is it? I can't see it.
I can see it.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
I will confirm on YouTube.
Thank you.
Right, confirmed. It's good on YouTube.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Stand by, Carmen. We'll start in just a minute. Everybody's here. Hey, good morning, everybody. This is the orientation for the Public Guardian and Conservator Advisory Board. 8:57, so we'll get started in just a minute. Just a reminder that we are live streaming to the DAR's YouTube page, and this meeting is being recorded. All right, good morning. Well, everybody's here, so we might as well go ahead and get started. As I said, this is the orientation for new members of the Public Guardian and Conservator Advisory Board. I'm George Worthington. I'm the Dementia Services Coordinator with the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services, or DARS, and I'm staff to this board, so I'll be conducting the orientation this morning. Thank you all for coming. Why don't we just do a quick round of introductions? I know you'll do this again later in the board meeting, but just to say who you are and your connection to the Guardianship Board. I'm going to do it in no particular order. I'll just call on you if that's all right. So, Ming Truong.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning, everyone. Ling Truong again from Norfolk.
Great. Thank you. Lindsay Pickrell.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Pickrell. I am here in Richmond at Thompson McMullen Law Firm. I'm the State Bar representative for the board.
Great. Thank you. Susan Elmore.
Hi, good morning. I'm Susan Elmore, and I am from Colonial Heights, Virginia, and glad to be back working with Public Guardians. I did some years ago, so it's nice to be back working with the Public Guardian program again.
And Susan, you're the DVHDS representative, is that right?
No, this is strictly
you're
governor's appointment. Yeah.
Sorry,
I
yes,
work,
that's right.
The disclaimer is I work for them, but that's not my hat today.
Right. Okay. Sorry. And Erica Wood.
Yes, I'm Erica Wood, and I'm up here in Arlington, and I'm filling the slot for I'm a member of the Commonwealth Council on Aging, and I'm filling that slot. I was previously on the Guardianship Board many years ago.
Thank you. And Betty Doherty.
Good morning, I'm Betty Doherty, and I'm the Director of King and Queen Department of Social Services, and I'm representing the Virginia League of Social Services Executives.
Great, thank you. And Kimberly King.
Good morning. Hi, Susan. I'm Kimberly King. I'm a Community Integration Manager with the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. I have an office at Southeastern Virginia Training Center, and I also support all the state behavioral health hospitals with ID and DD discharges.
Great, thank you. So very nice to have you all here. Thank you for coming ahead of the main meeting. So I'm just going to get straight into it. Let's see. We do have an agenda since this is a public meeting. The next item on the agenda is public comment, but none was received. So I will move on to the next item, which is new member orientation. So I wanted to start by thanking everybody for serving on this board. It's an important board supporting the Public Guardianship and Conservator program in Virginia, which, as you may know, supports just around 1,100 individuals with guardianship services who would otherwise be unable to afford that. Now, Patty Myrie, who's the Public Guardian Program Coordinator at DARS, will be presenting her update as usual at the board meeting today. And she goes through each segment of the program, each different slot area. So you're probably aware that there are a certain number of slots that are unreserved, and there are slots that are reserved for mental health, people with mental health issues, and also for people with developmental disabilities. So I'm not going to talk too much about the program itself. I'm going to start by going through the code that sets up both the program and the board, and then point you towards the chapter in the code on guardianship, which we're not going to go through in detail because that's covering both private and public guardians, and the public guardianship program is more circumscribed, but encompasses all of the private guardianship issues as well. And then I'll next turn to the administrative code section that regulates the public guardian program. And then we'll go into some basic information about the board operations, the bylaws, and just a quick overview of Robert's rules, and at least covering the information that I sent you, and then some housekeeping about your travel vouchers for when we will eventually again be meeting in person in Richmond. And then please stop me as I'm going if you have any questions at all. I know several of you probably know much more about guardianship issues than I do, so I'm looking forward to learning from you as you during your service on the board. But if I can answer any questions about the operations of the board itself and the information that I'm covering, please don't hesitate to stop me. Any questions before we get started?
Well,
No?
Joe, good
Okay.
morning. Good morning, Joe. This is Ning. I personally thank
Yes.
you so much for your effort to put everything together. And thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you, Ming. I'm happy to help out as I can. Okay, so and so I am your point of contact if you have any questions about the board or any other issues that I can help direct you to somebody else within DARS or anything like that. I do ask that all members communicate with each other through me. And when we get to the section on FOIA, or the Freedom of Information Act, that will become clearer as to why I ask that. So, okay, I'm going to just share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see this all right? So there's the agenda up there now. I see a thumbs up or something from, yeah, okay, good.
Got it.
All right, great. So I'm gonna. So you would have. I emailed you with all these documents last week. If you've had some time to review them, then you'll be able to follow along pretty well. I'm gonna run through these fairly quickly on screen, so you may not be able to read everything on the screen. But if you have any questions as you're going through them later, please let me know. So I'm going to start with Title 51.5, Chapter 14. So it's Section 51.5-149 is the establishment of the Virginia Public Guardian and Conservator program. And this is the section that has the definitions about the program and references to other relevant sections of the code. Section 51.5-149.1 is the enabling code for the Public Guardian and Conservator Advisory Board itself. So you'll see one of the things that we're doing in the main board meeting today is updating our bylaws, and one of the reasons is to bring them into line with the code because they are out of line at the moment. But so all of this information in the code will be reflected in the new bylaws. But there's 15 members of the board. Several of you have indicated that you are one of the tied seats on the board. So, for example, Lindsay Pickrell is the representative of the Virginia State Bar. Kimberly King is representing the Commissioner of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. Erica Wood is representing the Commonwealth Council on Aging, and Betty Doherty is representing the Virginia League of Social Service Executives. So of the 15 members of the board, all but 5 are tied to a particular organization or department, and the other 5 are at-large appointments by the governor. The board itself, so members serve 4-year terms, or 5 of the members serve 4-year terms, and the remainder serve 3, and members can serve 2 successive terms only, which makes it a little complicated. The chairman and the vice chair are elected each year by the members of the board. And interestingly, just 5 members of the board shall constitute a quorum. So normally it's a majority of the board would be the quorum, but for the Public Guardianship Board, it's 5 members. We will also be selecting a nominating committee today. That's done every year in the March board meeting to put forward a slate of officers, so the chairman and the vice chairman. In the bylaws, the existing bylaws, we also have a secretary. That position is eliminated in the proposed new bylaws, again, in line with the code, which only talks about the chairman and the vice chair. Currently, Rose Palmer is the chair and Christy Zed is the vice chair. I think Rose has served her 2nd term and will not be eligible for election again. Members receive no compensation for their services, but you are reimbursed for any expenses, such as your travel. And when we do meet in Richmond, we typically have a working lunch, so we do provide you with lunch. Section 51.5-149.2 is the powers and duties of the board. So this is really crucial. This is the reason for the board's existence. So the board is there to assist in the coordination and management of the local and regional public guardian programs, or the programs that are appointed to act as public guardians and conservators pursuant to Chapter 20. So that's Section 64.2-2000 of the code. So that's the whole guardianship section, which I'll just show you. Looks like this: the guardianship and conservatorship chapter. As I said, I'm not going to go through all of this because this is covering both private and public guardians, but it will be useful for you to certainly have a read through it if you're not already familiar with it. The board is also here to provide advice and counsel on the provision of high-quality guardianship service and avoidance of conflicts of interest. So every quarterly meeting, this is your opportunity to weigh in on the current programs, and if you have any suggestions and comments, this is your forum. The board is also there to promote the mobilization of activities and resources of public and private sector entities to effectuate the purposes of this article. So in other words, to support DARS and its support of the public guardianship programs around the state to affect that program. We're also here to make recommendations regarding appropriate legislative and executive actions, including but not limited to recommendations governing alternatives for local programs to follow upon repeal of the authority granted to the courts pursuant to Section 64.2-2015 to appoint the sheriff as guardian or conservator when the maximum staff-to-client ratio of the local program is met or exceeded. So
George?
the staff, yes.
Sorry for interrupting you. I had a question about legislation and the legislative committee, and I wondered, I see that there is a legislative committee in the bylaws, and I wondered if that's active and if there have been legislative recommendations put forth by the board?
That is a great question, Erica. So I've been staff since last June, and in that period, the legislative committee has not been active. I think it's been a couple of years since it's actually met. So I would be very keen to support getting that up and running again, so that we would be able to make those legislative recommendations.
Thank you.
So that might be something to bring up in new business if you're interested in that today.
In new business?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's not on the agenda, but certainly I think it's ripe for discussion. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And then we were also asked to submit to the department, so the department being DARS, by October of each odd-numbered year, a report regarding the activities and recommendations of the board to be posted on the department's website. So we will be doing that this year. The last report was 2019. I realize I didn't send you the last report. It is available on the, so if you go to the DARS Boards and Councils webpage, and I can direct you there if you're not sure how to find that. There are links to our SharePoint site where all the board's documents are housed, and that includes the biannual reports going back to, I think, 2013, something like that. So those legislative recommendations that Erica just mentioned would be typically contained in that annual report or biannual report. But it doesn't mean that we can't submit recommendations outside of that report. So section 51.5-150 details the powers and duties of DARS with respect to the Public Guardian and Conservator program. So DARS disperses the funds that support the program. DARS also makes the contracts with each program and regulate, well, oversees the running of the program. So that's Patty Myrie and her and Betty Vines, who's the Public Guardianship program staff member. So DARS also looks after the regulations, and you will be hearing a regulatory update. The regulations are being updated this year, and Charlotte Arbogast, who's one of DAR's policy analysts, or senior policy analysts, will be, will be giving you an update of that regulatory process today. Okay, so we also maintain statistics and statistical data on the programs and report that data every year to the General Assembly. So those reports can be found either on the General Assembly website or through the DARS website. And DARS is also in a position to recommend appropriate legislative or executive actions. So the board itself can make those recommendations to the department, and then the department can make those recommendations to the General Assembly. And I believe the board can also make them directly to the General Assembly and the executive branch. And then section 51.5-151 is the minimum requirements for the local programs. So this is the enabling code for the Public Guardian programs. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is where you can begin to understand the framework that supports the public guardianship programs. Unless anybody has any questions about that.
Hey, Joe, good
captioner
morning.
yes.
Regarding the contract with the local to provide service with at the garden, and how often that we renew the contract?
So the contracts are just being updated now, so they're getting a completely new, well, not completely new, but a revised and updated contract that I think every program will need to sign by the end of this fiscal year, so June 30th.
Very much annually, we have to renew the contract, right, George?
Sorry, bear with me just a second, Ming.
Okay.
Captioner, the captions are going into the chat, so could you please make sure they're going into the caption? Because thank you, perfect. Sorry, yes. So we do renew them annually, but I think Patty can tell you much better than I can, but I believe they are a 5-year contract with a annual term, so they have to be updated each year within that 5-year period.
Copy. Thank you.
Okay. So that's the code framework for the public guardianship program, DARS's activities in that space, and the Public Guardian Conservator Advisory Board. I'm just going to take us to the regulations now. So the regulations for the public guardianship program are in chapter, so Title 22, Chapter 70, so 22 BAC 30-70-10. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but these are the regulations that are currently up for review. So when Charlotte gives her presentation today, she'll be referring to this if you'd like to be able to, if you have this in view, then you'll be able to follow along with her much better. So if there are not any questions, particularly about the regulations, I'll move on to the next area. Okay. So that's the legal structure again of the program, the board, and the and DARS for the public guardian programs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about FOIA now. I did send you the complete FOIA, or Freedom of Information Act. I sent you the complete chapter on that, as well as the chapter on the conflict of interest. It's just, so there are a number of things to be aware of as a member of a public board. So you are subject to both of these acts, the Freedom of Information Act and the Conflict of Interest Act. Everyone will have completed a conflict of interest statement at the beginning of the year, and we do require that you do that, or the executive branch requires that that's done every year. Cecily Slacer, who is our administrative assistant, and you would have received emails from her already. So she will keep you in line with the conflict of interest and keep up to date with everybody to make sure that everybody's completed that on time. It is possible for the commissioner to be fined if the members of the public boards have not completed that conflict of interest training, annual training and recertification on time. So please be aware of that. I think every year, just around the turn of the year, so early January, you'll receive an email about that from Cecily. But I also wanted to, in the Conflict of Interest Act, again, I'm not going to go through the act, but if you are interested, you can, you should certainly read that as part of your certification. So now turning to the Freedom of Information Act. So I sent you this short pamphlet as well as the full act itself. But I find this really helpful. This is geared towards members of the boards and councils and other public bodies. So one important thing to note is that a meeting under FOIA is, under FOIA, it's considered a meeting anytime there are more than 2 members, or so 3 or more members of a public board. If they are meeting, that's considered a public meeting. And this is one of the reasons why I ask you not to email other members of the board directly. So if somebody hits reply all to an email, and it goes to all the members of the board, that's actually becomes a public meeting and should have had an agenda and notice of meeting and the other requirements of a meeting. So it's important to use me as a conduit for communicating with other members of the board. Let's see. If there are more than 2 members, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just wanted a point of clarification, because of course there's frequently times that me and Patty and Betty and Sheila, who works for me with the guardianship program, meet to discuss things. So are you saying that would be, no, you said if it's more than how many members convened, it's considered?
If it's 3 or more members. So Patty and Betty are not to the board, so that they're staff.
Okay.
So they're not included. So,
Okay.
So normally the orientation meeting, I wouldn't consider this a public meeting because I'm normally doing it with just 1 or 2 members. But because we had so many new members this year, we've got 5 people here today, 6 people here today, so that's a public meeting.
Okay.
Which is why we're
Thank
live
you.
streaming. And
Got nervous for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, of course, if you happen to be at, say, a legislative breakfast or something, and there were several members of the board there, provided you didn't speak about the board business, then that would not be considered a public meeting. So you're free to converse informally, but please don't discuss board business outside of the board, outside of the actual meetings. So we are required to take minutes for any meeting of the board or subgroup of the board, so any of the committees. So there will be minutes posted from this orientation meeting today, and all past minutes are available on the DARS SharePoint site, which again, you can access through the boards and councils page. Under FOIA, there is no secret or written ballots ever allowed. During electronic meetings, we take roll call votes. We are again required under FOIA to take a roll call vote rather than a simple show of hands or general A or nay. You are allowed to contact individual members of the board, and if you need people's email addresses to do that or phone numbers, again, please come through me. So you, for example, if you were canvassing somebody on an item of interest, you might want to approach people individually. So that's fine. You cannot. So that cannot be considered a meeting. So there's no, the board will not take action on that. Any action that was proposed would have to be voted on and agreed on in a full meeting. Closed meetings are only allowed under very specific circumstances, and our board would, I think, never meet those circumstances. So all our meetings are open to the public. What that means is not only can the public attend, they are allowed to provide public comment. So we do have in-person meetings, we would have 2 sections two items on the agenda, one at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end of the meeting for any public comment. So a person would be able to comment not only at the beginning of the meeting to maybe share something that they would like the board to consider during that meeting, but they can then comment at the end of the meeting on the proceedings of that meeting that just happened. During electronic meetings, we do not allow members of the public to attend the Zoom meetings, but we do accept public comment, which will be shared with the board by myself. So members of the public can send me emails or can call me to make a public comment. And people, the members of the public may watch this directly on the YouTube live stream. So that is how we are making the meetings available to the public while electronic meetings under the state of emergency are proceeding. So I would say that our next meeting in June will also be an electronic meeting. Given the pace of vaccinations and a potential return to some sort of normalcy, we may be meeting in person again as soon as September. But as long as the state of emergency is in effect, I would say we'll probably continue meeting electronically. And so that brings us to the last section here, which is electronic meetings. There are particular circumstances where members of the board may attend the meeting electronically. We are, as part of the updated bylaws, adopting an electronic meeting policy, which is required under FOIA. We didn't have one before. And so that details those circumstances where you're allowed to join a meeting electronically when it's being held in person. So I'm not going to go through all the details, but you can see those in the revised bylaws that I sent you as well. The main points are that you may attend an electronic meeting. You may attend a meeting electronically if there's an emergency, or if you are unable to make it to Richmond. The meeting does require a physical quorum to proceed, so we would need at least 5 members to be in person at the DAR's office in Richmond for the meeting to proceed. And there has to be one meeting each year, which we have decided is the annual meeting in June, where no one is allowed to participate electronically. If we do not have a physical quorum, but there are members attending by phone or through Zoom, then we're not allowed to conduct business, but we're not allowed to take any votes, but the meeting can proceed, but no votes or actions is allowed. Let's see. In the back section of this pamphlet just talks about records and emails and what is a public record. So it's important to note that any emails that you send to me in relation to the board could be requested under FOIA, and we do keep these for, I think, 7 years is our policy at DARS. Any questions about FOIA? It does get a little complicated, so if you're not used to it, you're likely to have questions at some point. So, okay, so the next item is Robert's rules. So the board does operate according to Robert's rules. We do tend to be a little informal about it, unless there is some reason to become more formal. So if there's typically the board operates very collegially, so there hasn't, as well, in my experience over the past year, there hasn't been any time where we've really needed to resort to the full different layers of motions and counter motions. We do ask that you are polite and respectful of your fellow board members, that everybody's offered a chance to speak if they would like, and that only we try and limit discussion to one item at a time. So if there is action to be taken, then a motion is required. Somebody is required to then second that motion. If anybody would like to amend the motion, then we can go through the levels, which are on a chart that I sent you. The basic parliamentary information here has a very detailed chart about the different types of motions and how they relate to each other. As I said, we have not gotten into the weeds of this chart ever in terms of motions and sub-motions. And hopefully we won't need to, given the way that this board tends to operate. And I'm guessing that many of you are used to sitting on boards and that are governed by Robert's rules. So we'll be very familiar with these. With these rules. Any questions about any of this?
Yeah, I have a question, George. Do the,
Sure.
when the committees meet as a committee, a board committee, do they also use Robert's rules?
Yes. So again, Erica, the committees have not been terribly active. So as I said, the legislative committee hasn't met in my experience, but yes, would operate under Robert's rules. So
Okay.
There's also there was a standing planning and development committee which hasn't met in several years. So I've proposed that be removed from the standing committees in the bylaws. The chair does have the option of setting up new committees as needed. So if for a particular task or to work on a proposal or something like that, and that would be those committees would be governed by Robert's rules. Yes. Any other questions? I know this has been a very quick overview. But hopefully, if anything's not clear, please don't hesitate to ask me, or if it's a program-related question, you can direct that to Patty Myrie. And hopefully, over your service on the board, everything will become clear. And again, I'd just like to emphasize the importance of this board. It is a very important, plays a very important role in supporting some of the most vulnerable citizens of our state. And your service on this board helps ensure that those most vulnerable people are well cared for and well supported legally and financially. So I feel like this is one of DARS's most important missions, and I'm very grateful to you all for being a part of this and helping support not only the program but also the citizens of Virginia that it helps. If there's no other questions, then you can have a 20-minute break before we start up with the board. We'll be on the same Zoom link, so you can either stay here or you can exit and come back, but it's the same Zoom link. Anything else before we wrap up?
Hey, Joe, this is Ning again. I do appreciate that you sent out the webinar, and I attend several of them. It's extremely useful that personally for me, because I know more than I expected. And like you just say, a lot of people have a very bad situation and we need to protect them or help them out. And thank you for that.
Yes. You're welcome. Yeah. So anytime I find useful information like that, so I think maybe you're referring to the webinar that Erica was in. I will send that out to you all, and any other kind of useful information that I come across, I share with the rest of the board from time to time.
Absolutely. Erica and Patty and another to end the hungry. What actually I have the notes here is roadmap to end the hunger. That's absolutely useful.
Great.
And thank you for the information.
Sure. Susan?
Yeah, George, I have a request. Can you send out the RCC link for the closed captioning for the meeting? Because the Zoom closed captioning only gives us the fragments and it doesn't tell us who's talking. So if you have the RCC link you can send out, that would be helpful. It gives us who's talking in the whole context.
So Susan, I'm not familiar with RCC. Is that a...
Yeah, when you registered for the Virginia Relay to get the closed captioning in the meeting, they should have sent you back a URL link that we can post into your browser versus the API code that went into Zoom, I hope.
So we're not using Virginia Relay.
Okay. All right, that may be the difference then. Okay, I'll just deal with this. It doesn't tell us who's talking, so you don't get the whole conversation. It just kind of runs in little snippets when you turn on closed captioning. That's all right. We'll make do. Thank you.
So one, yeah, I do ask at the beginning of the meetings that people identify themselves before speaking, because then it will be picked up by the closed captions, but not everybody does. But we'll try and be more mindful of that, Susan.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so with that,
we'll see you at 10 o'clock.
Yes, we'll see you at 10 o'clock. Thank you, everybody.
George, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I sent you several emails for you to make me co-host, and you, I don't know if you've seen it. I guess you were busy.
Actually, none of my emails have come through.
Yeah, I don't like talking on when the YouTube is running. I don't feel like showing my face. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. But yeah, make me co-host. No. But make me co-host, so just in case I need to do something for you while this meeting going on.
All right. Sorry, Joyce. Joyce, if you can just send me a chat, because I'll see that.
I didn't think sure. I didn't think you wanted chats to be sent when the YouTube is running or when your meeting is running. Okay, I'll know next time.
For technical things, it's fine, Joyce.
Okay.
It's just anything that's relevant to the business of the meeting shouldn't be in the chat. But,
okay.
But I'll see that, and I typically won't be switching back and forth to my email.
Sure. Hey, Charlotte. Am I? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and mute George.
Okay. Thanks, Joyce.
You're welcome.
I like your art, Charlotte. Behind your head.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, very cool. Are you, Patty?
I am good, George. How are you?